deceptive, manipulative.
He's also a former social worker and a political campaign activist.
Some people in town say the base is run by aliens working with our federal government to conduct mind control and genetic experiments.
I'm leaving. I'm glad. Thanks a lot, society, for railroading my ass.
Hello. I'll never know how to start an episode.
I will
properly.
never, ever get this right. What's up, guys?
This is the Eerie Americas. This is Vicky Ayala.
And this is Kristi Hull. I hope you like that intro. I'm not changing
I swear,
it.
we're not changing. We're not editing that out, guys. We're just going to go with it because we'll never know how to start this properly. So
we got good news in our little Brooklyn crew front.
So we have, Kristi, and we're a very close-knit little circle, and one of our close-knit circle people got engaged this week. So congratulations, Amanda and Ramon, who are very big supporters of the podcast. Thank you for listening, and we are so super happy for you guys. And now I have to lose 30 pounds for your wedding.
Yep, same here. I'm excited, though. This is awesome, and we all knew it was coming.
Except for you, apparently, Amanda.
Yeah,
we all knew it was happening.
Amanda was the only one that was doubting, but we all knew it was going to happen.
I wasn't even surprised when it happened, just so super happy because, they're awesome, and we love them.
Definitely.
So just want to do that quick shout-out.
Definitely.
I hope Amanda's not mad at us.
We love you. And on another exciting tip, we just recently did our Twitter. We hadn't had one for a while, and Vicky just decided to start one. And I told her, please, let's follow some of our favorite podcasts. And Expanded Perspectives was the second one to follow us back, and I flipped out when she told me that.
It's one of Kristi's favorites. She introduced it to me. I love it, and it was literally the second day we were on Twitter.
I've been listening to them for years. They're actually one of the inspirations that, for me personally, that made me want to do podcasts, like Cam and Kyle. Their stories, they're more clean-cut than we are because they're actually good guys. We're heathens. They are amazing. Their stories are awesome. Their conspiracies. They always find these really out there stories, their tales.
I love it.
They read a lot, so they have all these great books that we have to start reading more because they find these amazing stories in these books. They're just amazing. I wanted to shout you guys out.
Definitely check them out. They're definitely worth listening to. Thank you so much for the love, because they also came on they followed us on Instagram. And it was super fangirl moment, and Kristi was having a little bit of a bad day, and the minute I showed that to her,
my week.
Totally made her week.
It made that, not even my day, it made my week.
It made her
I've been
week.
on air ever since then. So thank you, Cam and Kyle. Thank you for the love.
Check out Expanded Perspectives for sure. We're gonna put that as one of the recommendations on our website.
Have you heard about the St. Louis style thing that's been going on this week?
No.
So apparently everyone is freaking out because this bagel shop in St. Louis cut their bagels like bread. So they cut them like pita, pita chip style, like bagels, like those bagel things, but they're cutting them like bread and serving it. And so somebody posted it and is like, this is St. Louis style, and New Yorkers are freaking out. What do you think about it? It's a sin, right?
It's not bread. Bread should be cut like bread.
Bagels are
sacred, especially for New Yorkers.
And honestly, my thing with the whole argument with it, it's not even just the sacredness of a bagel. There are just dimensions in a bagel that are soft and hard, and if you cut them, you're messing up the texture.
Just I'm sorry, if you're one of those people that scoops out the inside of your bagels, you are committing blasphemy.
I'm sorry, I've been scooping it out lately, but I'm trying to lose weight. That's
okay, if you're trying to lose weight, that's a thing, but there's people who just eat it that.
No, I hate my life every time I do it, but I do it because you save 120 calories scooping it out.
Well, now that we have a wedding to go to, I totally get it, but
I live my life like I always have a wedding to go to. I'm always on a diet, no matter what happens. I'm always in my mind going to a wedding or in a wedding or getting married. No matter what, it's still the same crap, but I try. So
I have to see what this looks like, because that's just sacrilegious.
I'll actually bust out a picture so you can. Everybody's talking about it.
A bagel is a bagel, and it gets cut like a bagel. It's not bread. So you took a bagel and you cut it in 47. Just eat the fucking bagel. A bagel gets cut in half. That is it.
That's it.
That is it. You cut it one way in half.
I agree.
St. Louis, get your shit together. And if you're from St. Louis and you listen, please don't get mad at me, but that's horrible. What are you doing?
Yeah, you guys need to stop playing around. We were serious about our bagels out here. Maybe you guys aren't. I don't know. I've never been to St.
We're
Louis. I hear
super
it's a cool
serious
town.
about our
I
bagels.
hear it's a cool town. I don't want to hate on you because of this bagel situation. I do want to go to St. Louis someday.
And if I go to St. Louis, please do not give me a bagel slice like that because I will throw it at you.
Yeah, seriously.
I probably won't. I'll probably still eat it, but still.
You'll see. If you just type this in, there's a ton of bagel stores in New York.
I can't believe I didn't hear this.
Calling this a mortal sin. So
it is a mortal sin.
We're really serious about it.
All right, I have to.
It's interesting and it's something to talk about this week. No, this is just not okay.
I have been working way too hard because I did not hear about this and now I'm annoyed.
But yeah, so we're going to move quickly because we have a crazy topic that's pretty lengthy. But we're definitely going to have Vicky read an email.
I'm going to read a pretty short email from our awesome friend Steven.
Steven is the man. He's also a great supporter. He's been a good friend for a long time and he has a crazy story. And if Steven tells it to me, I believe it. So
we actually heard this story when we went out and we were drunk. So we know that because he told it drunk.
And sober.
It's true.
Yep.
I would always pass King's Theater to go to school. For those of you not from Brooklyn, King's Theater is a very, very old theater that's in Flatbush in Brooklyn.
And it's a performance theater.
It's
not like a movie theater.
Super beautiful. It's like really, really old and historical. Amazing theater. I had to be like 5 or 6 years old. I remember it was so broken down and abandoned, like a lot of things in Brooklyn were when we were 5 or 6 years old. At the time,
right.
But he said, it always gave me the creeps. So one day my mom was taking me to school and I happened to peek inside the broken window of the ticket booth. I saw a man with his hands crossed on his chest. Well, what were his hands? More like stubs. It was wrapped with white tape where his hands used to be. He had no legs either. It was just from his torso up. And the creepiest part was that he was see-through, like he was there but wasn't there. You could see right through him. I tugged at my mom so she can look. She saw him and just said, "Don't look, keep walking." She never confessed what she saw until I asked her many years later. She said she saw a man, or at least what used to be. Which is super creepy because if you do walk by King's Theater, it is now rebuilt. It is beautiful, but the ticket booth is still on the outside. And I actually passed it recently and legitimately got the chills when I was passing it because it was closed and I could see what he was talking about. Mm-hmm. It's just crazy to me that years later his mom was like, yeah, I saw a see-through man in the ticket.
I believe a lot of landmarks are just haunted because
that building was around forever.
And people fell in love with that building and, spent so much of their time and energy there. Like a part of you stays in the same place that you're at for a very long time. So I think a part of you always stays and Steven just happened to see it and so did his mom. So pretty crazy story.
So what's your story today, Kristi?
So I have an interesting theory, I guess you would call it, and it's about interdimensional travel. This is something I'm a weirdo about.
Yeah, it's cool.
I'm part of the weird. I don't like saying conspiracy theorist, but I'm open to the suggestion of things and interdimensional.
Right, I don't like calling conspiracy either because that would just mean it's not true and it's just something that people come up with. But it's I feel like it's just a theory and it could know.
Or the term conspiracy theorist has been thrown around so much.
It's too much. Anything that's a little bit out of the ordinary, it's like a conspiracy theory.
Yeah.
It's stop. That's
I'm not an extremist. I'm just saying it's a possibility. That's all I'm saying.
We're open to it. We're open to ideas. I'm not going to go start a group or anything.
So throughout history, humans have had an innate fascination with the possibility of other worlds. One of my favorite late 80s into early 90s classics shows was called Quantum Leap. It was a hit TV show about a former scientist, Sam Beckett, who finds himself trapped in time due to an experiment gone awry, leaping into the body of a different person each week. And they kind of touched upon this theory. Another popular philosophy is the string theory, which is the attempt to unify. So this is the dumbed down version that I was able to find. It's the attempt to unify the four forces in the universe: electromagnetic force, the strong nuclear force, the weak nuclear force, and gravity together into one unified theory. So this is something that's been present in something that's been discussed in the science community and around the world, and for people that are interested in science and the ideas of a parallel universe and things of that nature. This isn't anything new. Is it this complex? Or do you have certain people or certain places that have the psychic ability to travel other dimensions, other worlds, or even other versions of their lives? Today, I have decided to tell you 4 tales of interdimensional travel. This, of course, has never been a proven possibility, but it hasn't stopped many from coming forward with their tales of travels to other places. It also hasn't stopped people from trying to make this fantasy a reality. So We'll start with that. The first one's the Montauk Project. The first tale comes from not very far from you and I, Vicky, so brace yourself.
Yes. I'm already getting creeped out because I'm like, this is too close for comfort.
This takes place in Long Island, New York. This phrase refers to a series of top secret experiments in time travel, mind control, psychotronics, and the creation of black holes. These experiments were based out of an old Air Force radar station, or more precisely, in a vast complex hidden in the earth beneath this radar station. How could such a radical experiment be underneath a town just a stone throw away from the largest city in the world, you may ask? It's a good question. But the story of the Montauk Project actually begins not in Long Island, but in Philadelphia in 1943. The Philadelphia experiment was the informal name of the Rainbow Project, which was an attempt by the United States military to create technology that would allow vessels, like ships, to achieve radar invisibility. So in other words, this is an early attempt at developing what we know these days as stealth technology.
Right.
These experiments came to be focused on the USS Eldridge, a Navy destroyer based out of the Philadelphia Naval Yard. According to legend, the ship was bombarded with electromagnetic energy, and it did become radar invisible. So this actually was a successful attempt in 1943. As a result of this, it also became literally invisible, vanishing from sight for a few brief seconds. The ship materialized off the coast of Norfolk, Virginia, before reappearing in Philadelphia 276 miles away, or 445 kilometers away. Okay. At first, it seemed like a miracle because all seemed fine, but unfortunately things were way worse than they appeared. Several crew members of the Eldridge had died horrible, painful deaths in the process of this teleportation. Some were literally fused to the metal parts of the ship.
Oh my God.
Those who didn't die were driven to the point of insanity by this terrible ordeal. Obviously, government officials and the military were horrified by the results of this experiment. Official funding was quickly pulled from the Philadelphia experiment, and the Manhattan Project took focus as far as the military weapons spending went. So they put it into the Manhattan Project, which later became the A-bomb. Some scientists and military officials who wanted to continue exploring possibilities created the results of the experiments in the Philadelphia Naval Yard. They wanted to continue to try.
Totally makes sense after
some psychopath science. Congress, however, refused to fund any further endeavors by those who wished to expand upon the results of the experiment. So these scientists and military went over the heads of the congressmen. It was decided that a secret military installation would be created where scientists could conduct experiments on new technologies away from prying eyes. An obsolete Air Force station on the air tip of Long Island, known by the code name Camp Hero, was decided upon as the perfect site. Montauk, a quiet, upscale, and at the time sparsely populated spot, was considered the perfect location. It was relatively secluded, yet still really close to New York City. The base went into operation sometime in the 1960s. Of course, there's no definitive date, but around that time. I was going to ask
around what time when it was sparsely populated, because it's like super populated
now. Right now it's super fancy and beautiful. By the 1970s, the experiments being conducted under the surface of Montauk had reached epic proportions and seemed like something more apt to exist in a comic book or science fiction rather than in a sleepy Long Island beach town. You would never suspect. And the government has done this previously in other sciences where they leave things in plain sight. So this isn't something
because you're never going to suspect that they're just going to leave it out for you to find. And then they always pick a town like that at the time not that many people live in. And they're like, what the hell would the government be doing in this, raggedy ass town? Like, not raggedy ass, because that was a really nice time, but my first question would be like, I mean, I get what that looks like, but why would they be here?
Why here?
Why here?
Right. The military focused on the efforts of the Montauk Project primarily on mind control experimentation. They gathered young males with psychic sensitivity, and in some cases, they even kidnapped some of these subjects. They call them subjects, but men, yeah.
Oh, that's nice when you call someone a subject.
These men would sit in a chair, like a specially developed chair, aimed at enhancing their latent psychic abilities. This chair was being blasted with energy waves that allowed scientists to control the youth's minds. So they were able to control their minds from this. Remarkably, it was discovered that the most adept of these young psychics were able to focus on objects so intensely that the objects would momentarily physically materialize. They would just vanish. So they were able to control these guys' minds so hard that they were able to make things disappear.
So the government's just always been able to control our minds?
Yeah. Legend has it that the most noteworthy wielder in this power was a young man named Duncan Cameron. Experiments on the powerful Mystic Cameron led scientists to realize that their efforts allowed them to manipulate reality not just spatially, but temporarily as well. In other words, they had become masters not just of physical space, but also of time.
So they can control minds and time?
Yep.
Okay.
At this point, many involved in the Montauk Project began to feel it was reeling out of control. No shit, Sherlock.
No shit.
Scientists were creating wormholes on the premise of the base, which could then be used to further time test travel. This was viewed as maniacal and dangerous by many. Yeah, I'd say this whole thing was maniacal.
Right, like, oh, so the wormhole made it maniacal, not the whole kidnapping people and controlling their minds and fucking controlling time.
That's where you draw your line.
I draw the line at wormholes.
The base itself was also physically growing out of control. By this point, its subterranean layers had grown so expensive that it basically hit the town of Montauk itself.
Wow.
Time was being tampered with, civilians were being endangered, many thought the project was growing too big to control, and it would meet a disastrous end, and in August of 1983 they proved correct. So they did this for over 2 decades before it just got out of hand.
So they thought that the wormholes made it out of hand, but like, sure, let's continue this for 2 decades.
Yep.
Okay.
It was determined, or the scientists that rebelled against the government, who were
right,
already
because
rebellious.
they already decided that the first experiment was horrible, and it didn't even touch on what happened.
I mean,
here.
not that the Manhattan Project wasn't horrible too.
Right,
it's just
but
very, again, this is all tiers of horribleness, and
right.
you can just decide.
It's like what way you draw the line. So apparently, there's people who did not draw the line at wormholes.
And a lot of scientists they always say to themselves, their ends justify the means, but where do you draw the line when it comes to humanity?
There's ethics for a reason. You have to make ethical experiments.
It was determined that those involved in the Montauk Project would travel exactly 40 years into the past to establish contact with the predecessors of the USS Eldridge in the Philadelphia experience.
So what, stop them?
No idea. They just wanted to contact them at that point.
Like, hey, you're going to fuse into the metal. Please don't go on the ship.
Those who wished to end the project saw this chance at this point. They got Duncan Cameron to envision a large, angry, powerful Sasquatch-like creature at the exact moment the 2 experiments came together in time.
So wait. You created wormholes. You can control time, and the way that you're going to do this is have Sasquatch. Think of Sasquatch.
Because Cameron had the ability to create this monster in his mind. So this was a way to kind of combat them trying to create this wormhole to go back to the USS Eldridge. So this man's mind was so powerful that he can create a monster.
Okay.
Yep. This is
okay.
This is what
I need to continue my drink right now.
Yes, this is my research. Have a drink, please.
I'm going to drink.
Have a sip. The beast materialized at Montauk and began destroying the base in a rage. It destroyed the place, tanking the project and disconnecting it from the past. So it was somehow able to just destroy everything. As soon as the equipment harnessing people's psychic ability was destroyed, the beast itself disappeared completely.
Well, thank you, Sasquatch.
And the time tunnels maintained by the scientists collapsed upon themselves. It had become obvious that the Montauk Project was impossible to support further. Project was dismantled. Many of the participants were brainwashed into forgetting what they witnessed. Others swore oaths of secrecy, vowing never to reveal what they'd witnessed out of the eastern tip of Long Island. The base was closed and abandoned. Some say minimal activity does occur there and is tied to the activities of the nearby institutions such as Brookhaven Labs. I looked into that. That's a whole other episode.
Oh, God.
Yes.
Stay tuned.
Some conspiracy theorists have claimed that the ongoing experiments helped inadvertently cause the tragic death of TWA Flight 800 off the coast of Long Island in 1996. And I distinctly remember that.
We were
it was
10,
insane.
yeah.
We were 10 years old at that time. We just gave ourselves away. These days, the surface of the...
I was 5.
I was 3. These days, the surface of the supposed site of the Montauk Project, where the radar station is located, is officially a state park now.
Oh, is it really?
Although there are some stories that people have crossed paths with a military man with a big gun, telling them to leave the property and never giving these tax-paying people an explanation. Who knows what the vast secrets they hold, or what still goes on there? The world will never fully know the truth of what has gone beneath the sandy soils of Montauk.
I'm never going to Montauk again. I mean, I didn't really go to begin with, but I'm not going again. Sorry, Linda. Do I pass Montauk to come see you? Because I'm not going to come see you anymore. Come to Brooklyn.
This is the second story. What if I told you that the Beatles never broke up?
Really?
How happy would that
I
make
would be
you?
so happy.
Right. Okay. In a parallel universe, the Beatles never broke up. John never got shot. George is still alive. And in fact, they have multiple albums.
Oh my God, I want to live in the
Sounds
universe.
too good to be true for you diehard fans out there, right?
Yes.
Right, Vic?
Yes.
Yeah, because I like the Beatles, but I'm not diehard.
I love the Beatles.
She's a huge Beatles fan. Well, according to a gentleman who has decided to go by the name James Richards, this is all true. He has a website. I'm going to read directly from the site, so I'm going to read it in his exact words. Okay. So I'm going to be saying blah, 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 but it's really James Richards' story. So here goes. The following is an actual account of my experiences as of recently. Because of the nature of what has happened to me, I must remain anonymous until I feel it is safe to reveal my name, but for now you can refer to me as James Richards. On September 9th, 2009, I experienced something that I am still having trouble believing happened to me. I came into the possession of a cassette tape containing a Beatle album that was never released. In fact, not only was it never released, but it was recorded many years after they broke up. And no, I'm not talking about Klaatu. Now, this is where the story becomes slightly more unbelievable. It is almost embarrassing to attempt to explain the incident to you for fear of you viewing me as completely absurd. I must assure you, I am not insane or on drugs, and hopefully the audio from this tape will be enough proof that there is more out there than you think. I live in Livermore, California, but on September 9th, I was driving home from Turlock after visiting a friend for a few days. I had my dog with me, and I didn't have any plans for the day, so I decided to take a drive through a place called Del Puerto Canyon, just west of Turlock. There is a scenic road that is a fun drive and actually goes through Livermore. I hadn't taken a cruise through it for a while, so I thought I would take it this way home. It was about 2 p.m. A ways into the canyon, my dog started acting like she needed to use the bathroom, so I pulled over the first available parking area to the side of the road and let her out while I stretched. At first I didn't notice, but then I heard barking from 30 yards away. My dog was chasing a rabbit. Now, my dog is pretty good, but if she's chasing something, then there's no stopping her. So the only thing I could do is become part of the chase. I'm sure as a dog person, you have a dog, you know.
Oh, yeah.
They already had about 40 yards head start of me, so I really had to book it. The uneven ground and soft patches made it difficult to run, and it wasn't very far into the chase I had stepped into a rabbit hole, fell, and knocked myself unconscious. When I woke up, I was in a room with some furniture and electronics in it. I was taken care of with a bandage on my head, but I still felt uneasy about the situation because where I fell and hit my head was a very rural, unpopulated area with no houses, and outside the window of the room, I could hear traffic. I wasn't near the window in the room. It was actually on the other side, next to an unusual-looking electronic machine that I didn't recognize from anywhere I'd seen before. The only reason this stood out was because it seemed out of place in this person's home, which most of the room resembled. I decided to get up and look out the window, but the door opened and in ran my dog, who was pretty excited to see me. When I looked up, there was a man standing at the door. He was about 6 feet tall, had medium long black hair, and was dressed casually, but gave me a greasy vibe, if you know what I mean. He introduced himself as Jonas and asked me if I was okay, which I said yes. He said he found me unconscious in a field with my dog barking at me, so I thanked him for helping me and my dog out, and I was surprised my dog even came back to me. I then asked him the question, would get me wondering if I had in fact gone crazy. I asked him, quote, "Where am I?" "About 20 feet away from where I found you," he replied. I told him that couldn't be possible because there was no houses within at least 20 miles from where I remember being. He then told me that what he was going to say next would be very shocking and unbelievable, and that if he didn't actually experience it himself, he wouldn't believe it. He took a look at the machine near the window and looked back at me, and he said he transported me into parallel Earth. He said he traveled to our Earth dimension and found me knocked out in the blazing heat with nobody around to help me. Normally, he doesn't take outsiders through a portal, but in my case, he thought I needed urgent help. I immediately started asking questions about traveling to parallel worlds, since I knew about this topic. This was a topic on YouTube videos of Michio Kaku. He told me to slow down and that he would explain himself. Apparently, in his world, parallel travel machine can be purchased quite easily while not cheap. It's pretty popular, even though the machine can be dangerous enough to cause death. In the 1950s of his dimension, the government was faced with the decision to continue to fund a space program, I'm guessing NASA, or a parallel dimension program called ARP-D. I can't remember what he said it stood for, but I'm pretty sure the PD is parallel dimensions, and I remember the acronym because I noticed it a lot on the electronics in the room I was in. He then explained that the real danger of using one of the machines was exploring new dimensions. Since there are infinite amount of Earths in the other dimensions, only a small amount have been explored. The problem with exploring unknown dimensions is the chance you will die somehow once you walk in through the portal doorway. He told me that people die from falling, if the ground isn't close enough to where the portals open, die from drowning, there are worlds covered in water, hard to reopen a portal underwater, die from fire, atmospheric issues. He said in order for people to avoid this, they would have to know that they would be on similar ground in the dimension they were traveling to. So his government began to research worlds that were safe to transport to, even creating public spots where people could choose a menu of worlds to go to that were all safe. That is literally like, I'm going to interject here as myself. This is literally some Black Mirror shit.
Like, it is. Like, I really feel like this is a Black Mirror episode where you go into this room and they give you a menu and ask you what dimension you want to go to.
They should actually make a Black Mirror episode like this.
Black Mirror, you should do this.
Yeah.
And wish we should be in it.
Many of the worlds were lush vegetation worlds that were ruined by man, only to be invaded by the larger overcrowded populations of the Traveler's World. Sounds familiar.
Sounds legit.
He said something about new industries that opened up because of this, one of them being something like dimensional life brokers. These people offer the chance to live as someone new in an already established similar world that doesn't know of the dimensional travel, nor that there are people crossing the dimensional borders too. Jonas said he was an explorer of one of the dimensional travel agencies and was looking in new uncharted dimensions and came in my Earth. We talked about a lot of things. It was interesting to see similarities and differences we had between worlds. Food, culture, TV, technology. We covered a lot. We also started talking about music, which was an interesting topic because there were many of the same bands between our worlds that existed, including the Beatles. When their name got brought up, Jonas mentioned that his brother just got back from seeing them perform at a concert recently, which I gave him a weird look to and said, "You mean they're still together?" And he said, "Yeah." I then told him how they broke up in our world and that John and George passed away. Apparently in his world they are alive, well, healthy, and still on tour.
Sign me up.
Jonas then had me follow him into another room that had a bookshelf-looking thing with some cassette tapes. Yes, the music ones. Yes, kids, if you don't know what cassette tapes are, look them up. Apparently CDs never caught on in his world. And a tape player / radio / record player, though it didn't quite look like the type of radios we have, the speakers looked more like crinkled cardboard but sounded pretty good. I didn't get to get a good look at the speakers, but they certainly weren't round. They almost looked like a tall accordion. The only Beatles album he had that was store-bought had a real cover art was Sgt. Pepper's, one of my favorites, which the cover looked slightly different than the one we had, but the songs were all the same. The other 6 Beatles tapes he had were all like somebody recorded them onto a blank cassette for him and wrote the song titles on the card slip in the case. A couple of the album titles written on the tapes I recognized, but there were about 4 that I had never heard of before. He played a few of the songs for them, which was totally surreal to hear Beatles music that was never made, at least in our world. We talked a little about it. He said a girl made the tapes for him while he was in upper school, what they call high school. She was a huge fan of them and wanted him to listen. He popped out the first tape and was putting in the second one when I told him he could record me a copy of one so I could take it back with me, thinking it wouldn't be a big deal. Well, the look Jonas gave me when I said that this part is the reason I am remaining anonymous. Not only did it sort of scare me, but it had a very serious, almost creepy look to it, followed by the phrase, not word for word, I can't remember exactly what he said. "No, you are not to take anything with you back to your world. No pictures, no souvenirs, no tapes, nothing." I asked him why, and he wouldn't really say except for my safety I wasn't allowed to take anything back. Of course, I am not that type of person to go through all of this parallel world stuff and not grab something to prove this outrageous story of my experience. So for that moment, I told him I wouldn't take anything and change the subject. About an hour later, after some more talking, I heard a doorbell ring, and he left the room to check the door. I knew that I may not have another chance to take something, so I grabbed one of the tapes and put it in my pocket, and then shuffled the tapes around to make it look less obvious that something was missing. When he came back inside, I said I was kind of hungry, just to get him out of the room. I mixed the tapes up a little so it was hard to tell one was missing. I didn't want it to be here when he found out. So he took me into the other room and fed me. For the most part, the food tasted like ours, but with different product names and colors. The purple ketchup was the strangest. We talked a little bit more, and then I expressed the notion that I should be going because it was getting late. The time of the day was identical to ours, as is all worlds. We went back in the room with the machines in it. I grabbed my dog and shook Jonas's hand for taking care of me after I was knocked out. I thanked him again and stepped into the portal, which felt like getting wet but staying dry the entire time. Really weird. When I put my dog on the ground, she even shook herself off thinking she was wet. Back in our world, I could see my car and the road still, and there was a straight line burn mark on the ground from where the portal had shown up. It was dark outside, and the only reason I noticed the burn was because it was still smoking from the heat. I walked back to my car, didn't run this time, and drove home. The worst part was I couldn't even listen to the tape on my way home because I didn't have a tape player in my car. I actually wasn't even able to listen to it at home either for some reason and had to go to Walmart to buy a tape player just to listen to it. Unfortunately, I don't have any information about the tape other than what is written on the card sleeve. The track names were written, as well as the title, quote, Everyday Chemistry. Everything else about this is as mysterious to you as it is to me. It also wasn't like I could have asked the guy anything about it, especially after taking it from him. I'll post some more about my experience in the upcoming days, but I have to go to work right now, and this post is long enough. If anyone has any questions they want to ask me about this incident, I have set up an email address that you can contact me at. This is thebeatlesneverbroakeup@yahoo.com. I'll try and answer everyone's questions as best as possible. Lastly, if there is anyone out there that has experienced anything like this, please contact me. Some of these things this guy said to me almost makes me wonder if this isn't the first time dimensional travelers have been here. James Richards. I know what everyone's thinking. I know people are like, you could mash up, you could take all these samples, you could do this. It does not sound like that. If this guy did that, then he needs to be into like a producing world because it sounds like real songs, like 150%. I Googled after this because I was like, this is such an incredible story. I even sent the zip file to another coworker who's a Beatles fan, and he was like, dude, I haven't heard of 4 of these songs either. There's 4 songs on there distinctly that I could not find. And then I even Googled every single song that the Beatles have ever released, and it's not on there. And then I typed in Everyday Chemistry and then typed in the Living Beatles to see if any of them have ever commented. And I only found that Paul stated that him and John used to write songs, and then, well, they would sing songs to each other. And then the next day they'd forget them because they were always like on drugs and partying and stuff. So that they said a bunch of Beatles songs have gone missing. So my theory is, what if in another world, those songs they
recorded were actually released.
And they remembered the songs and they actually recorded them. So that's my theory. That's James Richards' story. That's one of the most incredible stories. I had found people talking about this case, but then when I found his site, I was like, this is too good. I have to put the details in, because if I just read, this man came back with the Beatles tape, you can find it online. It wouldn't be as thorough. No. This guy, you can hear the desperation just reading this messaging. He wants to know what this was about too. He's just as confused.
And this happened in 2009, right?
2009.
Like 10 years ago.
And I know somebody will be listening to this saying, okay, it's now the digital age. Who's to say this isn't a mashup of other songs? He could have made this up. There's some D tracks he located, mashed it up himself. Maybe. Again, maybe.
Maybe. You never know, though.
These days, it's easy to brush off tales as like an overactive imagination, or an attention-seeking person, or a lucid dream watching a strange YouTube video. I've even done it myself. But these next 2 stories were all documented and accounted well before the worlds could easily interconnect and swap stories. So these are
way before the digital age.
These first 2 tales have come up over time.
After the internet and stuff.
But these 2 were recorded pre-internet, pre
I can Google everything.
So this one is known as the Gaddington Canyon Incident. This one I found particularly haunting because it wasn't just one person recounting the same story, but 4 women, and eventually even the police would not be able to give them any ideas or inklings into what they had experienced. It's a highway space warp case that took place in southeastern Utah near the railroad crossing of Modena, an unincorporated community on the edge of the Escalante Desert. This happened to 4 women returning from a rodeo in May of 1972. So this is the 70s. Okay. Again, the weird 70s. Jana North had been in the wheel of her father's 1971 Chevy Nova, and Carol Abbott was in the passenger seat. Sitting in the back seat were Lisa Rochefort and Bethany Gordon. It was roughly 10 p.m. when the girls crossed the Utah-Nevada state line 9 miles, 14 kilometers, east of Modena, and they were anxious to get back to the campus before their house mother, Mrs. Mortensen, locked the door. I could never personally live on a campus with a curfew, nor live with somebody named Mrs. Mortensen, but that's just me.
I was thinking the same. The minute I heard Mortensen, I'm like, that just sounds
She sounds
bad.
like a hen mother. Like,
yeah,
that's
like
literally
it just
what
sounds
she sounds
like, oh my god, we have to get back before Miss Mortensen wakes up. Like,
so 70s. Anyway, that stretch of the Utah Highway 56 is pretty desolate. All sand, sagebrush, octilio, and Spanish bayonet with the red sandstone bluffs on the northern horizon. So the girls were pretty happy when they finally spotted a Union Pacific Railroad crossing in Modena. Just past the rails, Jana noticed something strange. 2 sets of blacktop highways were headed off into the desert, one veered sharply to the southeast, the other shooting northeast towards the Canyon country further north. As the girls approached the Union Pacific rail line, the road leading off to Highway 56 looked inviting. It seemed to be more direct route back to their dorm. Their landlady, a stickler for curfews, always locked the doors at midnight, and it was already 10:30. None of the girls relished the thought of arriving late and being forced to sleep in the car. The opportunity to take what seemed like a shortcut strongly appeals to them, which I would probably do the same thing.
I do the same exact thing. Be like, oh, shortcut, let's go.
Gotta get home. The mysterious road curved sharply away from the main road towards the direction of the ominous Gadianton Canyon in the distance. Jana went left. She knew the Cedar City was 46 miles, 73 kilometers to the northeast, and she guessed the canyon would bring them home sooner than they had thought. Despite the stories of the canyon, the girls agreed to take the road. They gossiped about the day's event as the car was on its way into the ominous canyon. As they drove back, the dark rock walls inched even closer to the crumbling edge of the thin ribbon blue of the asphalt. 5 minutes later, the Chevy entered the Red Rock Canyon. Jana, who had been chatting with her friends, suddenly noticed the car's headlights were shining more brightly on the pavement. Looking closer, she let out a gasp. The white centerline was gone. Instead of black asphalt, they were driving on white cement. I've never seen white cement.
I've never seen white cement.
Suddenly, Carol exclaimed, "Jana, up ahead!" The road suddenly ended at a towering rock wall. They were boxed in by the canyon and had no choice but to turn around and go back to where they'd come from.
So they hit like the edge of the world or something? What the fuck?
So they have no idea what happened. All of a sudden they were driving, the highway changed, and they hit a wall. The three girls blamed the driver, Jana. I probably would have too.
It's your fault, Jana.
Now they'd have to sleep in the car. They'd never make it back to the door
Miss
because of the shortcut.
Mortensen's gonna be so mad.
And that cost them a half hour of driving, so they were pissed.
Not like, hey, we just hit some weird rock wall with white cement on the floor. It's like, fuck, Jana, now we won't get back.
Exactly. Impossibly, the landscape completely changed. Jana gasped. The highway ended abruptly at a rock cliff face. Jana stepped down hard on the brake pedal. Fishtailing slightly, the Chevy screeched to a stop in front of a cliff. It was a dead end. Putting into gear to reverse, Jana swung the cars around. She goes, "You'd think they'd put up a few warning signs." That would be my thing that I would probably say too. The girls complained, "Now we've got to take the road all the way back to Medina," Bethany complained. "We're never going to make curfew," Lisa said. "We're going to make good time once we get on the highway," Jana tried to reassure them.
Oh, positive Jana.
Yeah, she's driving. She's got this. Tense minutes had passed. Jana began to feel uneasy. They were still rolling along, hemmed in the red wall canyons. They should have been back open in the desert by this time. She had no idea why they hadn't hit the desert. The canyon gave way to open country. The girls gasped. Instead of the moonlight desert, they saw grain fields on the right and a large dike with stands of ponderosa pine on the left. So this went from canyon, well, first desert, to this weird red canyon, to fields. This is a desert. This should not be happening. And, mind you, the moon should not have been visible that night. There was a full moon. They had not seen a moon that entire night. Suddenly they were in this landscape with the moon. So that was really strange. When telling their story later, they recall at that moment they feel like they had driven into a different world. The events that followed would prove them right. Jana said, her gaze darting back and forth, "Where the hell are we?" Same, Jana. Same. At this point, the students were on serious edge. They had no idea where they were, and wherever it was didn't look like Utah or fucking Nevada. They had no clue where they were. Maybe someone could help them point them in the right direction so they could get back on the Highway 56 and finally reach their door.
So what do? Say, hey, where's Utah?
Approaching the light ahead of them, they discovered it from a large building, a roadhouse or a restaurant of some kind. The place sat in the middle of a large parking lot and a blazing neon sign on the roof that spelled out a message. At least that's what the girls assumed the sign was because they didn't read it. When in reality, it was like letters that were brightly light squiggles and curly Q's. But they didn't notice. They just rolled up to this place assuming it was a roadhouse or a restaurant. The sign's brilliantly glowing light symbols were composed of strangely twisted lines creating of mosaic weird curves, a written language unknown to any of them. Suddenly, some very tall men came out of the building. Quite a few people poured out of the door, spilling into the parking lot. Later, the girls recalled the people from the roadhouse seemed shocked and frightened at the appearance of their Chevy driving into the parking lot. Some of the roadhouse people seemed upset by the students' arrival, and they couldn't understand why. They waved their arms at the girls. Others shouted and pointed at the girls and the Nova. "There are some guys," Carol said. Just in case any of you guys were cute, Lisa started retouching her lipstick. Despite Jana's protest, Lisa told her basically to chill out. It's fine. She's going to find out how to get back. And just in case one of them is cute, she's going to perk herself up.
Always look good. You never know who.
As Jana slowed down, she noticed a good deal of consternation among the men, as if they'd been startled by some unknown animal. So they were on the defense and they couldn't understand why. As the girls pulled into the parking lot, Lisa got a good look at the throng of people milling outside the building. As soon as the people came out, Lisa stuck her head out to ask for directions. Instead of saying, "Hi, we're lost," Lisa let out a hysterical scream, told Jenna to floor it and get out as fast as she can. Why would a girl scream this hard? Well, the next part would be bizarre, but that's not even what did it. It turned out that Lisa screamed because she claimed that what she saw was in fact not even human.
Oh my god.
Soon after, the girls found themselves being chased by, quote, tri-wheeled, egg-shaped vehicles.
Well, that's why they looked at your Chevy like that.
Tires hitting sand, the Chevy zoomed away from the building. Jana stepped hard on the gas pedal. The lake flew by on her left. As they raced through the foreboding night on a strange road passing the strange lake, intense lights lit up their car from behind. The girls in the back seat saw the lights at the same time the driver saw them in the rearview mirror. Jana glanced in her rearview mirror, and what she saw turned her blood to ice. They were being chased by not any other vehicle that has ever been built in Detroit. They'd never seen this car. One of the ladies exclaimed, "Oh my God, they're coming after us." Egg-shaped vehicles mounted on tricycle wheels, automobiles, followed in their wake. It is depicted like two large wheels in the front and a smaller wheel in the rear. I found like a picture. We'll definitely put it on our website. Basically like an egg shape with a big light in the front and then three wheels. And that's basically what was chasing them. The Nova's engine reared as it crept up to 80 miles an hour. I cannot even believe a Chevy Nova can go that fast.
I agree.
Still, the egg-shaped cars managed to pursue them. They were just right on the foot with them. Ahead of the road led back into the Red Rock Canyon. Jana's Chevy plunged it by over 80 miles per hour. The road was so narrow, it was almost hemming the car. Like, that's how close they were. The Chevy's tire kicked up a billowing cloud of dust. They could no longer see their pursuers. The girls were back into the canyon. The Nova's roaring engine reverberated off the sheer rock walls. Soon, none of the girls could spot the wiring egg-shaped things anymore. Minutes later, they roared out of the canyon, back into the familiar desert. At once, the road vanished. The headlights showed nothing but sagebrush. Jana hit the brakes, but it was all too late. Although it quickly slowed, the Nova skated out of control into an arroyo and crashed into the bottom. The engine died. Although they were shaken to their core, none of the women sustained any injuries. The car, however, was undrivable. 3 of the tires were flat, and the hubcap, aka a rim, was missing. While Jana began to panic that her dad would, quote, kill her because of the car damage, Lisa was damn near hysterical.
She's the one that looked out the window, right?
She's the one that saw the things that were not human. So she's the only one that actually got a really good glimpse. So she sat on the ground, hugging the knees of her bell-bottom jeans, weeping and moaning. She kept mumbling, "They weren't human. They weren't human." The students stayed with the car until sunrise. Then they walked a couple miles due south. I can only imagine the relief they felt when they saw the blacktop of the familiar Highway 56. After about an hour, they flagged down a cruiser of the Utah Highway Patrol and told their story. Despite the reports of the Utah Highway Patrol's hesitation to write it, they still wrote it down, and there's been muddled over the years, but this is from the most that I could find that was accurate. Most versions of the incident named the trooper as Vic Lundquist, but the officer was, or it could have been Lundquist. So there's a couple different people, but there is a police report. So as best as can be determined, Trooper Vic Lindquist took the report, and the detailed accident makes fascinating reading. The report more or less supports the girl's testimony of what transpired that strange night off the Highway of 56 in Modena. The officer decided to do some preliminary investigation and thought maybe he overlooked being one person, but the strange evidence of another world continues as follows. So here's the evidence.
So she did an actual investigation.
Yeah, she looked around and other people came after, but this is what was definitively strange. There are no tire tracks showing where the Chevy had left Highway 56 in Modena. So they just see tire tracks and suddenly they're gone and then they reappear.
That's fucking strange, okay.
Tire tracks from the wrecked Chevy extended only 200 yards back into the desert and ended abruptly as well. No one could explain how the Chevy had gotten nearly 2 miles north of Highway 56 without leaving any physical trace of its passage through the rough desert terrain. Although volunteers searched diligently, not one trace of the Chevy's right front cap was ever found.
So they left that in the other world?
Perhaps the other world has placed Jenna's hubcap in a museum, or were just as freaked out as they were and threw the hubcap away into another dimension. No one will ever really know.
Did they ever, did Lisa ever describe what she saw? She just said it's not human.
That's all that I was able to find.
That is insane.
So we're down to the final one. Miriam and the elevator incident. This is the oldest case that I could locate that seemed to have some detail. Autumn 1934, a woman by the name of Miriam Golding had a profound, unusual experience while riding an elevator with her fiancé in Chicago. The elevator was crowded. When Miriam made a mistake and got off the wrong floor, she found that she could not push her way back into the throng of people and accepted that she would have to wait for the next one. That was when she looked around and was stunned to realize she was no longer in a music store at all, but rather an expansive and very busy train station. She got off the wrong floor in a music store in Chicago, looked around and realized she was in a train station, just like that.
Sounds like an episode of The Twilight Zone.
The enormous railway station she found herself in was bustling with fevered activity, with crowds of travelers rushing to their trains and booming announcements of arrivals and departures echoing through the air. There is no way this was connected to the music store. She had just been in moments before. The confused Miriam made her way to an information booth to ask where she was, but found that the woman working there completely ignored her, as if she wasn't there at all.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Puzzled, Miriam followed a series of signs pointing to the way to the street outside, and she emerged out into a mild, sunny afternoon that seemed to be during the summer rather than the fall, in a place that was certainly not Chicago. So she went from
fall in
Chicago to summer in some random place. She wandered about in confusion and noticed that everyone around her seemed to completely ignore her and walk by her as if they did not see her. At some point, she claimed she saw a confused-looking teenager standing on the sidewalks being passed by people who seemed to have no idea he was there, and Miriam approached him wondering what was going on. The boy was actually able to see her and respond to her and look in her direction, the first time anyone had acknowledged her presence in this strange, surreal place. She approached him. The boy seemed equally relieved that he was visible to Miriam, smiled slightly, and was reported saying, quote, "I guess they left you off at the wrong stop too."
Oh, shit.
The two lost people walked together down the street in confusion, the whole time completely ignored by those around them, and the teenager told Miriam of what had happened to him. He claimed that he was playing tennis in Lincoln, Nebraska, in the U.S., and had gone to the locker room to change his shoes. When he had gone back to the courts to play some more, he found that tennis courts that had been there moments before were now gone, and in their place was a huge train terminal, which had turned out to be the exact same station in which Miriam had enigmatically entered from the elevator. The two allegedly kept on walking until they reached an open area that led to water, and over the ways they could apparently make out a sandbar with several women upon it chatting and seeming to act as if nothing was beyond the ordinary. This is when I was like, what
I already
the fuck?
feel like that, but let's see.
This is when I was like, whoa.
Okay.
To Miriam's astonishment, one of the women was her fiancé's sister.
What?
Yes. The women on the sandbar seemed to notice them and began waving and shouting at Miriam and her companion. So the only people that were seeing her was her sister or her fiancé, her soon-to-be sister-in-law, and her friends. How? I have no fucking clue. This encouraged the boy to try and swim out to the sandbar, which did not seem so far, and yet he was confident he could reach. Yet, even though he was a good swimmer, it seemed that no matter how much he tried and pushed against the waves, he was unable to draw any closer to the mysterious sandbar, and he returned to shore in frustration. It was then that the sandbar supposedly vanished into thin air. Miriam closed her eyes in exasperation, disappointment, and exhaustion, and then was overcome by the sensation of floating through space. After some time, this odd feeling she claimed that she suddenly opened her eyes to find herself sitting atop a stool in the music store in Chicago, which seemed to be in the process of closing for the night, suggesting she had at least been there for several hours.
So she never got back on the elevator, she just ended up back in the store.
Yep.
Okay.
Disoriented, Miriam looked around for her intended, but could not find him and decided to head back to his home. When she arrived, her fiancé was noticeably relieved and explained that he had lost her in the store and had waited for her to come to the right floor for a few hours before deciding to come back home. Bizarrely, the fiancé's sister, whom Miriam had seen on the mysterious sandbar earlier, claimed that she had seen Miriam in town and had even called out to her, but that she had been too absorbed in talking to a young boy to notice her.
So she saw her and the boy?
Where did Miriam go during that time? Why should she and her fiancé's sister on a sandbar while the sister had seen her in town, all while they could not reach across to communicate each other? When they were separated by strange barriers, will we ever understand this? This is just truly a mystery. So these are 4 different very, very different cases of interdimensional travel. So we're not talking about people that claim to travel through space, but had these random experiences, and they were daily lives. They were just living their lives, and they just suddenly were altered into this. And there was so many other cases that like were amazing, but I picked one of the best ones that I could, and I wanted to get a variety because I knew people would say, "Oh, this is 2009, 2006." I found one from 1934. My phone was like,
please
"This goes back."
Yeah, those are crazy. I'm a little. I don't even know how I feel right now. I'm like creeped out.
So just the idea, like keep an open mind.
So many things we don't know and we don't understand, and just because it doesn't make sense to you, don't dismiss it. Because there's been plenty of shit in the past that people thought would never happen and was crazy, and then it happened. Keep an open mind.
And they've actually discovered other planets, other Earths in the Milky Way. So
if you're awfully narcissistic, if you think that we're the only ones who have figured out how to live somewhere. The universe is vast. It's infinite. We don't know what the hell is going on somewhere. And just keep an open mind and don't dismiss it. I think now is a very good time to go to the Who Does That?
And for those who might be new to this podcast and don't understand where the segment comes from, I'm going to just repeat this. We are Brooklyn. It's a famous saying. Everyone says who does that when you tell a crazy story or a tale. We wanted to make a segment to kind of lighten the mood at the end.
Because some of these topics are a little heavy, a little creepy, and we always like to end lighthearted.
So here's our Who Does That.
Who does that? Who does that? Who does that? Who does that?
For the Who Does That, please excuse me because I'm still a little creeped out. So I'm going to read you one from the Toronto Sun. The headline reads, "Woman reportedly uses t-shirt gun to launch contraband into prison."
I'm sorry, this is genius. Like, I know it's hilarious. What a better way to help your boo out who is locked up than a t-shirt launcher? Oh,
I've always wanted one. Not for this reason, but I kind of always thought.
Hey, if you guys make us famous enough, we'll get a launcher and we'll launch.
We will launch the shit at. I'll launch shit at you. And I'm actually. Side note, like every time I go to a baseball game, if I sit close enough, I have caught those things. Those things come really fast and hit me in the face.
I've never catch anything at baseball games. Never. It's never happened to me.
My little brother, who I have to stop calling little because he's 30, but when we were young, we went to I know Kristi's a Yankee fan, we're Mets fans. I know, tortured, whatever. I've dealt with it my whole life. So we were at a Mets game, and my brother's like little, and all of a sudden we see a cameraman, and the cameraman comes up to my brother and gives him an autographed ball from Edgardo Alfonso in a case. I'm telling you, we have have luck at these things.
Lucky.
So yeah, always wanted a t-shirt gun. So this is coming from Sayre, Oklahoma. An Oklahoma woman was arrested after authorities say she used a t-shirt gun to launch drugs, cell phones, and other contraband over a prison fence. The Oklahoma Department of Corrections says the incident prompted a lockdown at the North Fork Correctional Unit in Sayre, which is about 120 miles or 190 kilometers west of Oklahoma City. The agency says authorities arrested Carrie Jo Hickman after discovering the t-shirt gun and another package in her vehicle. Tulsa television station KOTV reports that the container that was launched Sunday contained cell phones, earbuds, phone chargers, methamphetamine, digital scales, marijuana, and tobacco. So at least she had a variety.
All the things you need in prison. All the things you need. That's all currency.
Except for cigarettes.
That's all currency.
So Hickman...
Everybody vapes now. No one smokes cigarettes.
I just think that she was considerate enough to get you the cell phone and the charger. Like, I thought that was great of her.
Oh, man.
Hickman remained jailed Friday in Beckham County on complaints of introducing contraband into a penal institution, conspiracy, and drug trafficking. Jail records don't list an attorney who can speak on her behalf. I gotta say, man, she should just be released because of her ingenuity.
Dude, I'd be like, you're ballsy as fuck. Like, you deserve to get out of here. And if she does go to prison, they're going to respect the shit out of her. She's going to own that prison.
I'm telling you, she would be like head bitch in that prison.
Yeah.
Like,
she's going to be the Red from Orange is the New Black in no time.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Like, that is, I'm sorry, is genius. My whole thing is, like, it doesn't even mention if she knows somebody in that jail. Or she's just like, you know what? I want to help you guys out. And just, I also want to know where she got the t-shirt gun. That's what really want.
That's what I'm saying. Where do you even get those? Who does that? Again, who
does that? This is why we have this segment, because really.
I hope we didn't creep you out too bad this episode. Shoot us an email. Let me know if you never want to hear anything like that ever again at theeerieamericas@gmail.com.
We'll be posting the Beatles tape and whatever pictures that Kristi was able to look up. We'll be posting it on our Instagram, which is the Eerie Americas. We also have Twitter, Eerie Americas, and our website, theeerieamericas.com. So if you want to see any of the episode extras from here.
And please feel free to drop us a rating, drop us a review wherever you listen. We're on Stitcher, Google, iTunes, Radio Public, Spotify. Thank you so much, and stay weird, Americas.
Bye.
Bye.